Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, and with me, Adam Lemmerich and Ben Snyder. Before we begin our show, I want to give a special shout-out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, and D-Shell. We really appreciate your support and investing in the Grid Network, and also a special hello to all of our listeners at the Ultimate Sports Radio Network, USRN. And on today's agenda, we have the NASCAR Cup Series at Circuit of the Americas, also the Repco Supercars at Simmons Plains Raceway in Tasmania. But first, we're going to start off discussing Formula One, the second race of the 2022 season, but the excitement in the air has been replaced with deep concerns and fears about the safety of everyone. And the day started off as normal, but it started to change fast. An unprecedented situation Formula One is facing, and a very troubling scenario. A huge proof of black smoke was seen outside the street circuit during free practice one. A missile was fired by the Houthis and struck Aramco petrol facility 10 kilometers away, and that's approximately 6.2 miles away from the street circuit. As word got around that the missile strike was so close to the track, concerns about safety grew. Formula One management met with team principals and drivers, agreeing they would race. A late night meeting, very late night, that lasted for a few hours. After Formula One management, the team principals came into the meeting room. It became apparent that the drivers had concerns about the safety this weekend in Jeddah. People were very vocal on social media, calling on Formula One to cancel the race weekend altogether. However, at 3 a.m. after the drivers left, it was announced the race would continue as scheduled. Not surprising at all, but a negative response from fans all across the board on social media because they were fearing that a bad situation could get much worse. And starting with you, Ben, simple question. Is Formula One making the right decision to continue with the race weekend as scheduled? And can you even focus on the race knowing this significant threat exists?
The answer to both questions is no. And I would hope that it would be fairly obvious at this point, given everything that's happened. I'll start with the second part of that question first. Look, I can tell you, I'm just, a fan, an analyst sitting on my couch here in the United States. I'm not going to be able to focus on watching the race tomorrow, assuming that it still goes on as planned. I'm not going to be able to focus on qualifying today because of the concerns that I have for everybody on the grounds over there. So I can't imagine what they must be feeling like given the current situation over there and their safety being on the line here. I'm very fortunate to be in a safe place at the moment, but I'm not going to be able to focus just, watching everything unfold. So that answers the second part of the question here. Is it right to continue on with the race weekend? I can't believe that after 4 hours of meetings, after everything that's gone on now, that we're sitting here, we've come to this conclusion. It's really as if nothing's changed. We're going to carry on with the weekend as planned. And I understand that, it's very easy for me to sit here and say, I would let, I wouldn't let money get in the way of my morals. I would be on the first plane out of there. I'm sure the drivers and teams and everybody there has, even more information than we've been given. They were the ones that were in the meetings for as many hours as they were. So I understand that it's a complex situation, but at the same time, I think everybody understands that the right thing to do would be to call the race off. There's obviously a lot of logistics to go into putting on a Formula One Grand Prix weekend in any country, let alone a country such as Saudi Arabia. So I understand that everybody has fears and concerns about the ramifications of calling off a race. But in a perfect world, I suppose in a perfect world, we wouldn't even be talking about this because there wouldn't be these issues. But if there were these issues and we could work around the logistics, the race should have been called off by now. And I do want to point out something that I just saw from this game from ESPN F1, who, of course, the U.S. division simulcast the Sky Sports feed here in the United States to broadcast the races. So I think that's fairly significant. But they reported a couple hours ago that there's a marshal at the track in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia who posted a message on Twitter that was in Arabic that is translated roughly as, "I hope Lewis Hamilton has an accident like Grosjean did in Bahrain." Now, that marshal has been removed from the track, has apologized. Take that for what it's worth there. And the tweet is no longer public and all that, and he won't be at the track this weekend. But that just kind of gives you an idea of what these people are dealing with. I heard Toto Wolff say that he thinks the racetrack is probably the safest place to be in the entire country right now with everything that's going on. If that's going on inside the racetrack with the marshals, it really makes me question that. And we should, on the subject of Lewis Hamilton, bring up, obviously Lewis has been very outspoken about social issues and fighting for what he believes in when it comes to making positive change here. And he reiterated something that he said last year. Last year he was quoted as saying, "Do I feel comfortable here? I wouldn't say I do, but it's not my choice to be here. The sport has taken the choice to be here." And this is coming from an ESPN F1 article from Nate Saunders. He said on Friday his view was unchanged. "I don't really know what to say. My position here is still the same as when I spoke here last year. There's not really a lot that I can say that's going on to make much of a difference. It's obviously mind-blowing to hear the stories." And he continues on, "But we don't decide where we go. I think we are duty-bound to try while we are here to raise awareness. It's not necessarily our responsibility when we are brought here, but we try and do what we can." So with that in mind, I think the drivers are going to have to try to make the best of a very, very difficult situation here over these next couple of days. I unfortunately don't see this race being called off unless they absolutely have to, unless there's a catastrophe that really forces their hand otherwise. But otherwise, I think, unfortunately, cash is king, and the re-race is one slogan rings pretty hollow today. It looks like it's simply that. It's just a slogan that doesn't really mean much when you take money into consideration.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, Ben. I'm glad I'm here in the United States and not in Saudi Arabia. With everything going on, do I wish F1 wasn't here? Yeah, it's called. I wish F1 could go somewhere else. Some people speculated we're going to go to Kyalami in South Africa. That's hosted Formula One in the past. I don't know if the track is up to Grade 1 FIA standards, but they do have a contract that they have to fulfill whether they like it or not. And all we can do here in the United States is just pray for everyone over there in Saudi Arabia, and hopefully we don't have any more missiles hit in the other buildings. To me, I wish then, like you said, Ben, cash is king. I think, if F1 teams could leave, then they would. But unfortunately, they have to fulfill this contract, whether they like it or not. So I'm glad I'm here in the United States, being able to watch the F1 race. But I will be thinking about everyone over in Saudi Arabia during qualifying and the race tomorrow. It's a scary situation what F1 is going through right now, just having to deal with everything going on between Yemen and Saudi Arabia.
I've seen a lot of dumb decisions in my life. Then I've seen dumber decisions, and the dumbest of them all. But this decision from Formula One definitely takes the cake out of the most outrageous decisions that I have ever seen. It's just really crazy considering everything that's happened this weekend, and they're still moving forward with this event. I feel like if their hands were not tied with this contract, with Saudi Arabia, I feel like they would have been out of there in no time. And given the Saudi regime's history of human rights and everything, it really seems like Formula One. Their hands are tied. They don't really have a choice, but they have to stay in the country right now, or who knows what could happen. Maybe even a situation like we saw with the WWE a time back, where a plane was essentially held hostage of all those people who were trying to get out of the country. And I'm sure Formula One doesn't want to have a story out there, saying all their drivers and team principals were held hostage by the Saudi government because they tried to leave the country. But overall, it was really nice to see all of the drivers, be united and voice their opinions, to stand up to their team principals and stand up to Formula One management, as well as to Stefano Domenicali and Ross Brown, letting them know that they feel like it's not safe, even though the outcome probably not what a lot of them wanted it to be. So you definitely have to give a big hand to the Formula One drivers for speaking their mind and not being afraid to do that. Because in an environment like this, you'd really think, if I speak out, there will be consequences, especially for members working inside the Formula One paddock. Because if you speak out about something and it brings a negative look, you could end up getting fired and lose your job. And working in Formula One is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So so for some people, they might have to, keep their thoughts to themselves. But I cannot imagine the scary situation that they're going through right now. And to be honest, I cannot even focus on the race itself because I'm worried about something bad happening. And I know we had some Saudi government officials attend the race last year and the Formula E race as well. And I'm wondering, since the Houthis are having this war with the Saudis, if we have Saudi government officials at the Grand Prix tomorrow, I'm concerned that that'll be they'll have a massive target on their back, and if they're at the track, and the Houthis have their missiles, what are they going to do? I know they said that this group just targets infrastructure and not civilians, but I'm going to take that claim with a massive grain of salt. I personally don't believe that for 1 minute. So overall, I'm just hoping for a safe environment. But Formula One is not going to get lucky every single time if they keep coming back to Saudi Arabia year after year. Last year, lucky that nothing happened. This year, we might get lucky again, and everyone will be able to get away free. But I'm afraid one time Formula One is not going to be as lucky in Saudi Arabia. And we've seen Formula One focus on social issues through We Races One, bringing up human rights, social injustice, and drivers not just being race car drivers, and taking on an activist role as well. However, we are aware of the ongoing human rights issues and war in Saudi Arabia. A 15-year deal with Saudi Arabia, so yeah, 15 years, so a long time, and that's going to provide plenty of funding for Formula One. So it'll be extremely difficult to back out of such an agreement. And starting with you this time, Adam, is Formula One's decision mainly guided by the business deal and money involved? And could this turn off even more fans from the sport, especially coming off this situation in Abu Dhabi, leaving such a sour taste in everyone's mouth?
Yeah, you know, um, a lot of fans have said, why are we racing in Saudi Arabia? You know, that they did have to move the walls back uh, a couple inches, So, um, but like we were just talking about, cash is king. I think the only reason why F1 is there in Saudi Arabia is because of money. A lot of people, would like to see F1 race somewhere else other than Saudi Arabia. Um, you know, Maybe you could go back to racing at the German Grand Prix, either at the Hockenheimring or Nürburgring. Those German fans love their motorsports. And it's a shame that we don't see a German Grand Prix on the current F1 calendar. Hopefully, we'll get one in the near future. Um, you know, and everything going on with Saudi Arabia, yeah, it could be a real turnoff, since a lot of fans, they don't like war and every. So, but I think the reason why F1 is in Saudi Arabia is because of one thing, and that's cash. So it's going to be interesting, and hopefully after this contract is done, Formula One can leave Saudi Arabia and go to a different place, and it'll be much safer. And like I said, one example is maybe go to maybe bring back the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring or Hockenheimring.
Yeah, it is crazy that with all the history of Germany and Formula One, that that country's absent from the schedule right now, especially when we have those two great tracks. And Adam, you mentioned South Africa as well as Kyalami. I don't think that track is up to modern Grade 1 standards, but I certainly think that with the amount of money that they're making off of deals like this and the amount of money in Formula One, if they wanted to, absolutely they could have a race in Africa, and we all know they should have a race in Africa if you want to call yourself a true world championship. That's the only continent aside from Antarctica, I guess, which you're obviously not going to have a race there. But there needs to be an African Grand Prix, and certainly this is the race that should lose its slot on the calendar. Yes, money is absolutely king above all and everything else when it comes to business decisions that are made in this sport, and this is certainly no exception there. And I do think, to answer the second part of this question here, it is going to turn some people off, and it's very unfortunate because, particularly here in the United States, it's crazy to me to see commercials and mainstream outlets and people picking up on Formula One and to see how many people that I know personally that have gotten into the sport over the last few years. As somebody that was into the sport before Drive to Survive in that era, it's been really great to see. We have a comment from our friend Edward Hunter here. Sadly, I think fans will quickly forget about this. The time to get upset about this was when the race was first announced in 2020. The danger was always obvious. Well, I can tell you, Ed, that there certainly were a lot of fans that were upset. I just went back to, I was talking with one of my friends yesterday. We went back to messages that we exchanged in November of 2020, and we're talking about the human rights situation. I brought up that this is a country that women were only allowed to so much as drive a car, and this is an entire sport centered on driving cars in 2017. So, it's only been half a decade that they've even had that basic human right over there. So the human rights record is absolutely terrible. And this country never should have been given the opportunity to host a Grand Prix in light of that. So I think there were some fans that were upset about that. And it's unfortunate that it took actually having the race and seeing a threat like this for the rest of the fans to wake up and see the real danger here. So, I think absolutely it's indisputable that cash is king above all. But, when you think about what happened in Abu Dhabi a few months ago and the fact that a lot of fans still aren't over that, despite the fact that Michael Masi's gone, despite the fact that the report has been released that says it was human error, it has been a PR nightmare for Formula One the last 4 months or so. And it's unfortunate that coincides with the biggest period of rapid growth that the sport has ever seen.
Yeah, you're right, man. It's been a massive PR nightmare for Formula One, and the PR nightmare is only going to get worse from here in Saudi Arabia, especially if the race is going to go on as planned. I know things can change last minute, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case this time. And yes, you guys are. I don't really have much to add. Cash is king. They have to fulfill their contract, but there are rare instances where you can get out of contracts. I'm not sure what Formula One is going to do. I'm not sure how they would be able to get out of this lengthy 15-year contract with Saudi Arabia. But if it's possible, I'm sure they'll certainly try to do that, because this is such an uncomfortable situation for all involved, and it's really crazy. It took a missile strike towards the track for a lot of the fans to finally wake up and see the threat that we saw from the very beginning. As soon as this race was announced on the Formula One calendar, and we have another comment right quick in the chat room from Edward Hunter from Formula Zone saying, "You absolutely agree with Ben. Questions now have to be asked of all other motorsport series taking place in Saudi Arabia, such as Formula E and the Car Rally." Also, attacked as well. Yeah, I remember last year that the missile that was intercepted over Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. I believe it was during the podium ceremonies and when they were packing up the paddock down there in the Dakar Rally. We reported on an incident that took place early 2022 on Grid Tonight, where the French rally driver was in Saudi Arabia for the Dakar Rally, and he ran over an explosive and suffered severe leg injuries, which is a really scary situation. That an explosive like that happen when you're there for a race and you're there for a good time, but instead you don't know if you're going to come back alive and well, and that's really the danger of racing in such a environment like Saudi Arabia. So I definitely have to say Formula One going to Saudi Arabia was a big mistake, and if they're smart, they try to find a way to get out of this deal because it's really scary. I know right now all of us here at GRIDnet we're in the comfort of our own homes, but everyone working in Formula One, I can't imagine what their true feelings must be, how scared they must feel about something very awful happening. We certainly hope that the worst does not happen, and it's really hard to focus on the race itself, especially with such a ongoing situation, unsettling situation in Saudi Arabia. And with that said, we still have an obligation to talk about the on track action itself. And starting with that, Charles Leclerc was the fastest in free practice 1 and 2. Ferrari continuing there to look very strong, exiting Bahrain and entering Saudi Arabia. And this morning, cars back on track after all of the crazy off the track drama that was happening. Charles Leclerc completed the sweep of the practice sessions of Ferrari fastest in free practice 3. So Ferrari, they're proving they're still the favorites to win. But could we see Red Bull challenge them tomorrow after a frustrating double retirement in Bahrain?
Well, I'd like to think that Ferrari are the strongest. I think the practice speeds have shown that. I know it's not always indicative of how qualifying is going to go, and we'll have that answer hopefully in a couple of hours. I think they have to be considered the favorites, particularly after the struggles that Red Bull had at the end of the Bahrain race last weekend. Hopefully Red Bull have those sorted out. But I have to say, if there's anybody that can get around this circuit, and you think about the lap that he almost completed in last year's race, one final corner, and it would have been one of the greatest laps in Formula One history. That would certainly be Max Verstappen. So Ferrari, I think, are certainly the favorites, but you can never count out the defending world champion Max Verstappen in Red Bull Racing. So I think it's probably going to be a battle between the two of them. Mercedes still have some work to do to get back up there. I have no doubt they will eventually. But as for this weekend, Ferrari, I think, are the favorites, but they can't take it as a cakewalk. I think Red Bull will pose a little bit of a threat.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Ben. I think, I think this weekend Red Bull will challenge Ferrari, not in qualifying, but also I think for the overall win. Max Verstappen and Checo Perez have been up there as well for all the practice sessions. But right now, Ferrari is dominant. Charles Leclerc sweeping all 3 practices. Could that be an indication he sits on the pole again and wins the race again here in Saudi Arabia? It's going to be interesting to see how everything develops for qualifying the race. But I think Red Bull can take the fight to Ferrari. And once Mercedes get everything situated with their cars, I think this year it'll be Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari challenging not only for the Driver Championship, but also the Constructor Championship as well. So I think we'll have a 3-team horse race all season long between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes.
Well, Adam, right now it seems like it's a 2-horse race at the top of the grid between Ferrari and obviously Red Bull is strong as well. Mercedes is a little bit behind, but I believe as the season goes on and they bring updates to their cars, we're going to see Mercedes join the fight at some point. It looked like Lewis Hamilton wasn't even going to finish on the podium last weekend in Bahrain, and then Red Bulls had the issues, and there he is, Hamilton on the podium. So you definitely can't count out Mercedes, although they've gotten off to a slow start to begin the 2022 season. And we have a pair of comments in the chat room from Michael Tiller saying if the Saudi Arabia race goes on in spite of that explosion, you just hope that the Jeddah circuit has been improved given what happened last year. And yeah, Michael, they've actually made a few adjustments to the race circuit in Jeddah, addressing all the drivers' concerns that they had last year. And so we'll certainly have to see how it races tomorrow. And you also said you would love to see Red Bull compete their double DNF last week. Was very upsetting. Yeah, considering how strong Red Bull was last week, it was pretty shocking to see how that unfolded. We're expecting to see Red Bull get a lot of decent points in the Constructors' Championship and Max's title defense off to a great start, but both Red Bulls starting off in the basement, and they'll definitely look to rebound this weekend so they can really get in the hunt early on in this young season. And moving on, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, top three teams, no surprise. However, the best of the rest looks wide open in the midfield, looking extremely, extremely competitive. So outside of those top three teams, which team is most likely to be the fourth best in Saudi Arabia?
Well, taking a look at all the practice times, one team that caught my eye was AlphaTauri. Yuki Tsunoda was up there. Pierre Gasly was up there as well. Kind of good to see them, in the top 10 in practice, in the practice session. So I think a team to look out for in the midfield is AlphaTauri. Another team that you can't count out is Haas F1. I think, with what happened to Kevin Magnussen last weekend in season opener in Bahrain, it's going to be interesting to see, going forward, how that team does. For one team, I think you can't count out this weekend is AlphaTauri.
I think Valtteri Bottas is proving that he does, in fact, possess a lot of talent and has been given an opportunity to showcase that at Alfa Romeo. It's been great to see him have some strong results to start the year. And Zhou Guanyu as well has been very strong for somebody only in his second Formula One Grand Prix weekend. He's been obviously finishing the points last weekend in Bahrain and has another shot to have a strong run again this weekend. So I think Alfa Romeo has certainly flexed their muscles a little bit from last year. We talked about Haas a lot last week and that great run Kevin Magnussen had, but I do worry about the issues that he seems to have been having in some of these practice and qualifying sessions. So we'll see. Hopefully they get those sorted out. Alpine is another team that I think could be up there as well. They have two very capable drivers in Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. So Kobe, like you said, it's a completely wide open battle for P4 in the constructors right now, and I think it's going to take a few race weekends and a few different kinds of tracks before we see who's going to establish themselves as kind of being the best of the rest, if you will.
Yeah, definitely, Ben. Gonna take a few races in to see who's probably gonna be the best of the rest, and we're gonna be really interested to see which teams are gonna be able to rise to the occasion during this first third of the season. And qualifying is gonna start shortly after our show in about 20-25 minutes time, and the race is tomorrow unless something major happens at the very last minute. We, as well as everyone, is hoping for a safe Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap Up, we'll have a full recap of the race and latest news about the security situation, plus more on our Wednesday Grid Tonight show if we have any further developments. Before we move on to the next section, I have another comment from Michael Tiller saying you're happy to see the lower field teams like Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri coming up in the points there. Definitely great, but your fingers are crossed for Aston Martin. Yeah, I'm sure Aston Martin really hoping that they can turn things around after a really disappointing Bahrain Grand Prix, especially for all of the Mercedes-powered teams, which seem to have a really tough time in the opening race of the season. Now switching gears to the Repco Supercars Championship, the first of 3 races at Simmons Plains Raceway in Tasmania is in the book. Cam Waters won the pole, but the favorite Shane Van Gisbergen started down in 5th place, but it wasn't a problem at all for him. SVG got got his way to the front in no time, didn't run away with it. Will Davison had him in sight, but just did not have the speed to match Shane Van Gisbergen, who ended up starting off the weekend in Tasmania with another victory. Adam, can SVG win all 3 races and sweep the weekend in Tasmania?
He could, but I'm going to talk about some other drivers that could win races 2 and 3. Taking a look at the top 10 standings, one driver that has caught my eye is the driver of the number 88 Red Bull Ampol Racing Holden Commodore, and that's Brock Feeney. This is his first time at this track since the Dunlop Super 2 Series does not compete here. He started in the top 10, qualified, and finished he finished solidly in the top 5. Him being a rookie, I don't think that's phasing him right now. And you look at Will Davison, I believe he tied his owner, Dick Johnson, for most podium finishes in a career. 4th place was another young driver, Brody Kostecki. So SVG could sweep all 3 races, but there's a lot of talent this year in the Repco Supercars Championship, and I don't think he does. And when we get to pick a winner, I'll just say this. One of my picks is a first-time winner. Who will it be? Stick around to the end of the show and find out.
Wow, first time winner. Sure, a lot of people would really like to see that. And I'm actually gonna say Shane Van Gisbergen has a high chance of winning all 3 races. The opposite of you, Adam, but I don't think it's gonna be as easy as we think it is. I'm sure a lot of people expected Van Gisbergen to come through the field and win race 1 of the weekend, like we all expected, but he didn't do it in typical Shane Van Gisbergen fashion, where he just runs away with it because Will Davison, if Shane had made a mistake, Will Davison could have pounced and got the win there. So the field this weekend at Simmons Plains Raceway is it's extremely competitive, just like the Formula One midfield. So I could definitely see someone taking the fight to Shane Van Gisbergen, but I think he's definitely the favorite to win the second and third race this weekend. And the driver who entered the racing weekend as the championship points leader was Chaz Mostert, also one of the favorites to fight SVG for the title. In the first race at Simmons Plains, Mark Winterbottom made a move on the inside of David Reynolds as the 2 drivers went spinning, and there was nowhere for Mostert to go. Contact, heavy damage to Mostert's car, so he had to make an unscheduled pit stop, lost a lot of valuable championship points, and finished a disappointing 23rd place. After having a bad first race at Simmons Plains, and this track known for beating and banging, how important is it for Mostert to have 2 clean races coming up?
Oh, it's very, very important, Kobe. Like you said, Chaz Mostert is one of the favorites, to go against SVG for the championship. And for our viewers, Simmons Plains Raceway is one of the shortest tracks that the Repco Supercars Championship goes to. Only 2.2 kilometers. And like you mentioned, all the beating and banging. And I think Chaz Mostert has to have a solid second and third race at Simmons Plains Raceway. At least have scored some top 10 finishes. Otherwise, yeah, I know it's early in the season, but if Chaz Mostert wants to take the fight to Shane Van Gisbergen, I think he has to have the next 2 races have to be really good, starting off with qualifying and then in the race. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chaz Mostert will do in races 2 and 3 at this track in Tasmania.
Yeah, Adam, you brought up a lot of excellent points. I think Chaz Mostert definitely needs to have some nice consistent finishes in race 2 and race 3 this week, and gonna be really important because you don't want to start off the championship in a hole. Yeah, but we all know that drivers are gonna have a couple of bad races a season at least, and maybe he got his bad race out of the way right now, so he can go on the attack and try to reclaim that championship points lead. If he has another bad race, or if the entire weekend is bad for Monster, he could be in a significant hole early to start this championship battle. But mentioned the beating and banging, and you said it's one of the shortest tracks on the supercar schedule. Yeah, so for all of our American fans out there, think about Lime Rock Park. We call that the bull ring of road racing here in the United States. And so if you wanted to get a comparison of how the racing is like there at Simmons Plains Raceway, think about Lime Rock Park. It's definitely, yeah. I remember when I was watching the race at Simmons Plains, I was thinking this race is more like a short track than it does a road course because of the tight corners, the beating and banging. So you need to make sure. Well, all the drivers out there need to make sure that, that they're limiting their mistakes and they're not going to get caught up in an incident. But sometimes it's just not possible because that was the thing with Chaz Monster. Reynolds and Winterbottom were having a mega battle, and then both of them end up spinning. And Monster right there, he's in the gas and just crashed right into him, nowhere to go. So sometimes, all of this is totally out of your control, and we're gonna keep an eye on Chaz Monster to see if he can rise to the occasion and bounce back from a bad opening race of the weekend.
Thank you, Kobe. And now let's shift gears here to the NASCAR side of things. NASCAR returns with all 3 series to the Circuit of the Americas for the second time. And there's some good news. There's no rain in the forecast. So this year, drivers won't have to worry about racing in the rain, unlike last year's monsoon race, particularly what we saw in the Cup Series. There's 39 cars in the field, including some familiar road course specialists such as AJ Allmendinger, Andy Lally, and Boris Said. And a qualifying update for everyone. Right before we went on the air, recovering from a spin into the tire barriers in practice, Ryan Blaney took pole position for tomorrow's race. Now, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson won on road courses last year. They have to be considered favorites to win this weekend. But one driver that we want to spotlight here is Ross Chastain. He took 4th place last year. He is running the Xfinity race today as well. He has more top 5s than anyone this season. And really, if it hadn't been for his practice crash at Auto Club, it might be a different story. He might have another one there. So, Kobe, we'll go to you first to start off here. Ross Chastain is riding a very strong start to the year. He has 3 consecutive top 3 finishes here. Is he a driver that you might consider the favorite out of a Chevrolet to win this weekend, or are we still going with one of the Hendrick Chevrolets?
And before I answer your question, Ben, you mentioned the road course ringers in the field like AJ Allmendinger, Andy Lally, and Boris said. One road course ringer I forgot to mention is Joey Hand, is in the number 15
That's right.
Ford Mustang for Repco Racing.
Right.
Yeah, Joey Hand's is a Ford factory driver, having a great opportunity by Ford to run all the road courses this year in a Stewart-Haas race and prepared Ford Mustang. Yeah, a gift to him for his commitment and loyalty to Ford over the years. So really cool to see Joey Hand in the field this weekend. And as for Ross Chastain, I think things are going to swing more Hendrick's favor this week on the road course because Hendrick's road course program is definitely top notch right now. But Ross Chastain, looking at him in qualifying, the number 1 Chevrolet is looking really fast once again. I think Ross Chastain is actually an underrated road course racer. So it would not surprise me if he's potentially in contention to get the win this weekend. And you remember thinking back last year to when they were racing in the wet, Ross Chastain had a really great run in the rain at COTA when he was at Chip Ganassi Racing. So I certainly think that if you still haven't decided on a pick a winner, maybe Ross Chastain could be an option to potentially go to victory lane this weekend. But not just Chastain, his teammate Daniel Suarez looking strong and qualified as well, and his teammate at Trackhouse. So I think both Trackhouse cars are going to be extremely competitive this weekend. But as we've seen in past road course races with Trackhouse, it seems like they've had quite a time with reliability on road courses. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get those issues fixed, and if they do, then they can definitely be in contention.
Well, before I answer this question. Shout out to Boris said making a return to the NASCAR Cup Series. I believe he's 59 years old, and he's driving this weekend. So, and we all know how good he used to be on the road courses. We think back to Watkins Glen, Sonoma, competing in the Truck Series, in the Cup Series. So, pretty cool to see him jump back into a NASCAR stock car this weekend at Circuit of the Americas. And I think when it comes to all the Chevrolets, I think Chase Elliott has to be the favorite. In fact, Chase Elliott is the only Hendrick Motorsports driver that hasn't won this year. And who's the defending champion of this race? Chase Elliott. He starts 12th tomorrow. And, so I think Chase Elliott will be up there. Kyle Larson will be up there. But, and so I think a Hendrick Motorsports driver will win tomorrow. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything develops at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, and you certainly can't count out AJ Allmendinger either. Of course, he won on the Indianapolis road course last year, and Colleague are stronger than ever now with 2 cars and 2 charters to go with them. So I'm sure he's going to be up there as well. You've got to think Hendrick will work their way to the front of the field at some point during the race. But Ross Chastain is certainly somebody that you can't count out with the run that he's been on. And Kobe, I do agree. I think he is an underrated road course driver. It's been great to see him, after he went on that fantastic run in the Truck Series in 2019 and nearly shocked the world with a championship. It's been a bit of a slow start in the Cup Series for Ross Chastain. He spent 2020 at Colleague Racing in the Xfinity Series and had a lot of strong runs. He did everything but win a race there. But it took him some time to get up to speed with Chip Ganassi last year. But Trackhouse obviously believe in him. We know he's a talented driver, and he's making the most of an opportunity he's got now. I think it's only a matter of time before he wins a race, and that could come as early tomorrow, I think, with how strong he has looked this season. Now, Hendrick Motorsports, like you mentioned, Adam, they've seen 3 of their 4 drivers take victory this year. Chase Elliott's the only one that still hasn't done that, although, again, I think it's only a matter of time. But Joe Gibbs Racing is 0 for 5 as we start 2022, and the last time Gibbs didn't win a race until the 6th race of the season was 2015 when Denny Hamlin broke through at Martinsville. So, Adam, we'll go to you first this time. Which Joe Gibbs Racing driver do you think is most likely to have the highest finish this weekend, and could they even break through for the win?
Well, taking a look at qualifying, Christopher Bell is 7th for Joe Gibbs Racing, and Denny Hamlin is 8th for Joe Gibbs Racing. It's a road course, so but I think Denny Hamlin will have a strong race this weekend. He wants to break through, after the start to the 2022 season that he's had. He wants to win a race and get in the playoffs. So I think you can't count out Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and don't forget Kyle Busch as well. I believe he is competing in the truck race this afternoon, so give him some experience, running at COTA. So, but I think one driver you have to look out for is Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, one driver to look out for, Denny Hamlin. And if I had to pick one driver that probably have the highest finish, probably not the Joe Gibbs Racing driver that you're going to expect. I'm actually going to say is most likely going to be Christopher Bell. And like I said about Ross Chastain being an underrated road racer, they think a lot of people don't give Christopher Bell enough credit for his road course racing skills as well, and he doesn't either. And I remember when he won an Xfinity, I believe he won an Xfinity race at Road America, he said, "I'm not even a great road course driver," which really isn't the case, because Bell is really solid road course racer, and he last year won the race on the Daytona road course. And so Bell's road course skills are certainly up there. And will Joe Gibbs Racing win at Circuit of the Americas this weekend? I have to say I don't really think so, but I could be wrong. So stick around for our pick a winner segment coming up to see which driver we're gonna go with to potentially win the race at Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, it is easy to forget that Christopher Bell is a Cup Series winner with the pandemic interrupting things and forcing some of the races onto the Daytona road course, with NASCAR trying to get a 36 race schedule in there. But Christopher Bell took that opportunity, and he is a Cup Series winner. So he certainly, I think, like you mentioned, Kobe, another one of those underrated road course drivers. And who knows, maybe he'll be up there as well. Now, one driver that has had a rough weekend already and has a rough weekend ahead is Brad Keselowski. A massive L2 penalty for unapproved modifications to supplied parts leaves him without his crew chief for 4 races and also gives him a 100-point penalty and a 10 playoff point penalty as well. Now, this isn't the first time his team has been looked at for modifications. We saw, of course, RFK and Penske had tires confiscated at Daytona. Ultimately, nothing came of that. But Kobe, is this harsh of a penalty going to send a signal to teams that's very clear you don't modify vendor supplied parts? Or do you think we'll still see teams continue to push the limits in every aspect of this new next-gen car?
I still think we're going to see teams push the limits. That they've always pushed the limit, but maybe they won't push it this far. And I remember when NASCAR released a new rule book at the beginning of the next gen era, a lot of people were being like, "Wow, these penalties are significant," and they're extremely lucky they didn't get hit with a L1 penalty, which is the most severe, one of the most severe penalties that we've ever seen in NASCAR history. If they would have got hit with the L1 penalty, that basically would have meant that Brad Keselowski, even if he won a race later on in the season, he would get banned from being a part of the playoffs altogether. And hopefully, and I'm sure NASCAR hopes that it never gets to that point where they have to ban a driver and team from competing in the playoffs, regardless of how they do in the regular season. But I think that NASCAR needed to make an example out of somebody, send a strong message that you cannot modify these parts, that these parts are spec and you have to use them as they are, that you can't do anything to them because we need to make the competition as fair and as close as it can be. So this penalty is a massive shot. RFK Racing going to appeal this penalty. Who knows if they're going to win their appeal? But I know one thing: Brad Keselowski is in a massive hole now. He's just ahead of Jacques Villeneuve in the driver's standings, who only won one race at at the Daytona 500. So Keselowski is behind all the full-time drivers running this season, and he's definitely gonna have to be up on the wheel. Get in the top 30 in points, which should not be an issue. But it's really crazy. Only a couple of races into the season, and Brad Keselowski is already in a must-win scenario if he wants to make the playoffs, because it's gonna be unbelievably difficult to try to point his way in. I don't really see how that's going to happen at this point, given the team struggles that they've had to start the 2022 season.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, Kobe. Pretty weird to see Brad Keselowski ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. That's crazy. But NASCAR did say they didn't want anyone to push the limits, and well, we saw what happened. It's going to be interesting to see going forward. I think all the NASCAR teams now know that if you do push the limits, you know what could happen. So I think all the NASCAR teams now, after seeing this happen to Brad Keselowski, I think they'll be much more how they push the limits and what can they do, so no one else gets penalized. I think now Brad Keselowski has to win a race, to get into the playoffs, and there are some tracks on the schedule that he is really good at. So we'll see what happens going forward with the number 6 RFK Racing team.
Yeah, my immediate reaction to the news was this is worse than when Michael Waltrip went through that whole jet fuel scandal at Daytona Speed Weeks in 2007, and it might even be worse than MWR Spingate in terms of the points penalty, because at least with MWR, the points were split among each of their 3 cars within one organization, and it didn't even end up knocking Clint Boyer out of that year's chase. And Brian Vickers was part-time anyway. It didn't really matter for him, whereas this is a 100-point penalty. The last time I remember that number being given for a points penalty, we had the old point system where you could score up to 195 points in a single race. So I'm trying to think of what that would be under the old points system, and it's just a staggering number of points here. I mean, I know we have stages now that allow you to maximize your points total in a single race a little bit, but you think it's 40 points if all you do is win the race. So this is basically 2.5 race wins that Brad Keselowski's in the hole now. So Kobe, like you're saying, it's virtually impossible. It's going to take a perfect storm of events for him to point his way in at this point. He's absolutely in a must-win situation here. And it's crazy to think about, him being right there with Jacques Villeneuve in the point standings when Villeneuve's only run one race. And again, that's a reminder of Michael Waltrip being stuck at minus 27 or whatever it was for a bunch of races in 2007 as he was struggling to so much as qualify. Brad Keselowski's not going to have to worry about that, but he is going to have to worry about going out there and winning multiple races to kind of recover any chance he has at a championship this season.
I completely agree with you, Ben. And now it's time for everyone's favorite game here at GRIDnet. Pick a winner. And we take a look at our updated leaderboard standings. You see to the left of me, Kobe's on top with 5. I'm second with 4. Our colleague Ben Schneider is 3rd. Matt White is 4th with 2. And there's a logjam behind Matt for 5th. So if you want to get on the leaderboard, use the hashtag pick a winner on social media, and you can see yourself on the leaderboard as well. And now it's time to make our picks. And our colleague Joshua Birch is unavailable to join us today, but he did make his picks for F1. He went with Charles Leclerc. So I'll start with you, Ben. Who wins the F1 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix tomorrow?
Well, that's assuming the Grand Prix even still happens, and at this point it looks like it will, and certainly our best wishes are with everybody over there in the middle of a very difficult situation, which I'm sure is probably not going to get any easier as the weekend goes on. But assuming everything stays safe and we get a race, and hopefully we will get a race, and it will be what comes out of that weekend will be a positive rather than a negative. I have to think Charles Leclerc is certainly the favorite, so I will make that my pick a winner for the F1 race in Saudi Arabia. I think Ferrari are certainly the favorites at this point. We could see Red Bull mix it up a little bit, but I think at this point I have to stick with Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, it seems like the Ferrari is still the favorite. This weekend, Charles Leclerc swept all 3 practice sessions, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can continue on with his dominance and win the pole in Saudi Arabia. Qualifying is only moments away from beginning. So I think Ferrari's going to keep the good times rolling to start off the 2022 season after the last couple of years have been really bad. Think some great things are happening for Ferrari. So I'm going to go with you, Ben. Think Charles Leclerc is going to get it done and go 2 for 2 to start off the new season.
And I'm going to agree with that. And I'm going to agree with my colleagues here at GRIDnet. I'm saying Charles Leclerc goes 2 for 2 as well. And I believe he'll get the pole, and I believe he will get the win tomorrow in Saudi Arabia. And we have a comment from Michael Tiller. He says, my thoughts and prayers do go on with Saudi Arabia and all affected. But if the race happens, it's tough to say. But I would say Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen. Thank you, Michael, for your picks. Now we switch over to Tasmania, where Supercars has 2 races left there this weekend. So I'll start with you, Ben. Who wins race 2 and race 3 on the Apple Isle of Tasmania?
Well, as always, full disclosure, Supercars is not necessarily my strength, and I will defer to the great Adam Lemmeries, our Supercars expert, when it comes to our picks here. So don't take any fantasy advice from me. But I think if I had to make a pick just to try to gain a couple of points here on the leaderboard and close the gap to both Adam and Kobe here, I'll just say SVG continues and has a perfect weekend and sweeps races 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah, looking like it might be a perfect weekend for Shane Van Gisbergen, and that's why I'm going to do the same. Think he wins race 2 and race 3. And coming up, Adam said he has a surprise first-time winner in Supercars. So let's see who Adam goes with.
Race 2, I'm going with Shane Van Gisbergen. In race 3, I talked about him a little earlier. He had a solid top 5 finish. It's his rookie season, and he's in the number 88 car for Red Bull Impel Racing. But from everything I've seen so far, I'm going to say a first-time winner. Yeah, I'm going Brock Feeney to get around Shane Van Gisbergen and win race 3 at Timmins Plains Raceway in Tasmania. I don't think Brock, being a rookie, has phased him so far this year. He's been solid all season long from what we saw in Sydney in race 1 in Tasmania. So race 3, I'm going Brock Feeney. And now, coming over here to the United States, NASCAR Cup Series races at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Chase Elliott is the defending champion and an overall favorite. So I'll start with you, Ben, who wears the cowboy hat on Sunday and takes a checkered flag at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas.
It's going to sound kind of homer here. I know I'm a multimedia producer here. Now I've got to remain neutral, but I did grow up an AJ Allmendinger fan. And, I'm reminded he finished top 5 here last year, and he already has a Cup Series win with Colleague Racing on road course last season. So I'm going to spice it up a little bit, go a little bit different here. And I'm going to say part-timer again in the Cup Series this year, AJ Allmendinger gets another win at Circuit of the Americas tomorrow.
AJ Allmendinger is definitely a great pick for the win, but I'm gonna go with the only Hendrick Motorsports driver who hasn't won a race so far this season, and the defending race winner of this event. I think the driver at number 9 Chevrolet is gonna get it done. Chase Elliott.
Kobe, you took my pick, but I'm still going with Chase Elliott as well. To win tomorrow. And like you mentioned, he's the only Hendrick Motorsports driver not to win. He is the defending champion. So I don't see why you wouldn't go with him. And now I'll flip it over back to Kobe Lambeth for the closing of another excellent episode of our Grid Live pre-race show.
Thank you, Adam. And we certainly want to remind all of our viewers out there to please share your picks down in the chat below. Who do you think is going to win the Echo Park Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas, the NASCAR race, the 2 Supercars races remaining at Timmins Plains Raceway in Tasmania, and also the Formula One Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? So please feel free to drop those in the chat below. And if you get it correct, you'll join our leaderboard. And with that said, another edition of Grid Live pre-race in the books, and we want to remind you, please like and subscribe to our Grid Network here on YouTube. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon, Invest in Grid Network, to keep us on the air well into the future. Do you want to buy me a coffee? Click the link in the video description below, and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at Grid Network. And he was in the chat room earlier. Big thank you to Edward Hunter from Formaliza and Amber and Zachary for buying us a coffee. We greatly appreciate it. Any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet. Visit Public.com, also known as the Stock Market Social Media Home. The link below and referral code will give you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And tomorrow we're going to be back on the air 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas. So there definitely will be a lot of racing to recap this weekend from Austin, Texas, Tasmania, and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and finishing up our program right on time before the NASCAR Cup and World Truck Series, currently on their pace lap. About to get going, a doubleheader today at COTA truck race about to go green, and then Xfinity later today, and Formula One qualifying is ongoing right now. So we'll let you all go so you can enjoy all of the racing on this action-packed Saturday. So for Adam Lemeries and Ben Snyder, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you for watching and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.